Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Evolve Metrics Station. I'm your host, Perry, and today we have the great pleasure to speaking with Roy Osing. Over a 40-year career, Roy served as the president, CMO, and chief leader at TELUS, where he guided a young data and internet startup to more than $1 billion in annual revenue. And now it's 18 billion in a national telecom powerhouse. Beyond the boardroom, he's also a seven-time author of the Be Different or Be That series, including his latest title, The Audacious, Unheard-of Ways I Took a Startup to $1 billion in Sales. He's also a speaker, a mentor, and an awesome content creator who has already appeared on over 100 podcast episodes. So, Roy, welcome to the station.
Thank you, Perry. And listen, I'm honored to have been asked. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for being on the show. And here in the station, I've got one question for you. I know that before we hit the record button, that just a short session is not enough. You got so much experience, made so much mistakes, and so much information and wisdom to share. But if I have one question to start off, it would be, what are the most audacious, practical moves that any founder can make right now to drive real sustainable growth, regardless of the company's size?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is stop chasing tactics. I mean, most young companies and young leaders, they are often and awfully tempted to go chase tactics like, well, I'm going to apply AI, I'm going to follow these social media kinds of strategies, etc., without having an overall strategic context for their business. And so the first thing that I would say, and I deal with CEOs all the time on this, and they're just chasing. I call it chasing yummy because it's so cool to chase an AI solution or this or that
Mhm.
without a fundamental context within which those tactics actually work. So what I would say is you need strategic context. And for me, we had to create our own approach, and I call it a strategic game plan. You can get all sorts of information about this on my website. But it's fundamentally a process that is a stripped down version and it's oriented to execute. Okay, so my philosophy is look, spend 20% of your time getting the plan just about right. And then what you need to do is bear down on execution. And that's where you want to spend 80% because guess what, right? Growth doesn't exist in the mind, Perry. It exists by doing things in a competitive world, powerful customers getting things done. And so the strategic game planning process is a process that actually can be achieved in 48 hours. Okay, so I'm asking you to create this context, right, that give reason and purpose for the tactical things that you really want to do, like AI and so forth. The process is really simple. It answers three questions. And if you can do this, and you should be able to do this, then you have your strategy. The first question is how big do you want to be? That's a question about growth, and it's top line revenue growth. It's not profit, it's not EBITDA, it's top line revenue. Why? Because top line revenue is an expression of how the market feels about the value you transfer to them. Okay. Net income doesn't because there's too many costs in there and depreciation and all other stuff. So focus on top line. You want to grow your business? You need to be mindlessly focused about top line. Okay. How big gets you to actually explore that and make a decision and declare. If you're at 1 million today, where do you want to be in 24 months? By the way, that's the other part of how big. Okay, the planning cycle is 24 months. It's not 5 years. 5 year plans don't exist because the fourth year never shows up, right? Because you keep putting things off. You're putting things off. And 24 months focuses you on to do what? To execute. So how big is a statement of top line revenue in 24 months? The second question is basically who do you intend to serve? Where are you going to get the money? So this is all about focusing on as few customer groups as you can that have the latent potential to deliver that revenue. All right. And so you want maybe one, I hope, probably not realistic, two, three, four, but you don't want 75,000 groups of customers because now you're entering the mass market phase and they don't exist, people. Mass markets don't exist. We know that, right? And if you want your business to be successful, you have to be targeting at the customer group that has the potential demand to actually generate revenues for you. So that's the who to serve. But you don't stop there. You then ask the next question. It's not about what do they need. It's about what do they crave? What do they covet? What do they desire? What do they lust for? The point I'm making is you can't compete successfully and sustainably if all you're doing is delivering what people need because it's way too competitive and it tends to be a commodity business. What you want to do is find the sweet spot in the market, okay, where you can provide what I would call emotionally triggered value at premium prices. That's why I call them figure out what they crave. So I want to know what Perry craves. I don't want to know really what he needs because everybody's in that space. I want to know what he desires because I'm going to package it in a way that makes him go, oh my God, here's $500,000, Roy, and that's just super, right? The other reason you want to play in the craving space is there's no competition. Nobody plays in that space. Everybody plays in the need space. That's why the commodity business is so damn problematic to businesses. Okay, so how big is growth? Who do you want to serve as target? The third most important question is how am I going to win? How am I going to compete and win in those customer groups? And this is where I created probably the most influential piece in my work is called the only statement. It's a statement that says we will compete and win in those groups of customers that we want to compete in by being the only ones who do what we do. The reason it's so important is the world today is full of what I call claptrap. Everybody's complaining to be the best. Everybody's complaining to be number one. Everybody's complaining or claiming to be market leaders, etc. And of course, those words are meaningless to a customer that wants you to answer the question, why should I do business with you as opposed to your competitor? And so the process attacks the differentiation dilemma by creating an only statement. So I would say to you, and I know this is carried on, but look at this is so important. You need to do the work. There's no gimmick here. It's 48 hours of hard work. How big do you want to be? Who do you intend to serve? And how are you going to compete and win? You walk out of the door in the 49th hour with a strategy that you can execute in the field. Okay, with a strategy that informs how you should use artificial intelligence, a strategy that informs what your appropriate social media plan should be, and a strategy that informs how you intend to architect the cost side of the business. Costs follow demand, they don't push demand. And so that's the scaling model and the growth model that really worked for us as we marched to a billion. There you go.
That's some amazing insight there. And one thing that I noticed is that none of the things that you said are something that will change 50 years from now. They are
Yeah,
almost evergreen, especially about the understanding the customers and who your target audiences are. And going through this process basically forces company a company to differentiate themselves and have their own unique proposition in the marketplace, correct?
yeah, yeah, and just a couple of points. Really, really nice observation. You talk about we're all searching for sustainability in our world today. Well, you just found one of the pieces, okay? Because this process is sustainable because you will always, always, as a business, be seeking how to grow. You will always be seeking which customer groups should we be targeting. You will always be seeking what is the appropriate value proposition, okay, that is different. And the only statement here is so critical. I mean, I'm working with, for example, landscaping companies who thought that they were in the business, okay, of cutting lawns. After the session, they've decided to be the only ones who offer customized property development solutions, okay, to houses and homeowners. Here's a landscaping company who's now in the property development business. Now, it's a defined property development business based on what they do, but it's also leveraging the relationships that they have and the other strengths in the community that they have. It's just a different way of thinking. So that need to differentiate will always be here. And in fact, I would say to you, it's being done more poorly today than ever before. And that's, I call it undifferentiation. And it surprises me when you have technology growing so fast, competition so intense, customers so powerful, regulations changing, you would think that businesses would get smarter at defining what makes them special. But the exact opposite is true. They're getting worse. And one of the reasons is for that is that textbooks, and here I go on academics, okay? Textbooks unfortunately suggest things that don't work. They suggest universal selling propositions that don't help you define uniqueness. They help you create brand promises that they think are unique but aren't. Listen to this. Here's a company that is here's their brand promise. The Earth's most customer-centric company. So here's a company that is promising its customers that on the face of the earth, they and they alone, I get excited about this stuff. They and they alone, right, are the most customer-centric. Now, do you believe that, Perry? Do
I
you
don't
believe
even know
that,
what that
first of
means.
all? I mean, how could anybody be so preposterous to even suggest that? And yet here it is. It's in writing. And another one. Here's a company that's promising the world's most refreshing beer. Seriously, you're in Britain. Would anybody believe that? Go into a pub and say, hey, that's the world's most refreshing beer, and they'll throw you out, dude. Anyways, the world's getting worse at it. And so part of the strategic game planning process that I'm suggesting that you young people out there who either have a business today or are thinking about starting a business, you need to do this work. Because if you don't, I've had people tell me what they think their brilliant idea is, and I've had to stop them from spending money because all they were doing is throwing good money after bad because they weren't clearly differentiated. They didn't have this a strategic context in terms of how to build loyalty once they started to get some momentum on the revenue line, etc. All these fundamentals, okay, were not taught to them, and not a surprise because most academics have never run $1 billion a year business. But for us, we need to take these messages and teach people and help them. And that's why I share this stuff all the time, Perry, is because there's such a gap between what is known to work and what people actually adopt as guiding principles in their business. And so
Mm,
hopefully we can make a difference.
yeah, that's so crucial. One question is that as you can see that technology right now is accelerating, artificial intelligence is all over the place right now. Information seems to be something that is abundant and people can get access to it anytime they want. So, just like you said, a lot of people would think that businesses would get smarter. How did they go the other way around and not getting smarter instead? What do you think is the biggest reason for that? And how do they avoid that mistake?
Yeah, so very simply, they're not asking the right questions. I mean, if you're led by the data that presented to you, then you're forced to figure out how to apply it. That's exactly it's bass backwards, right? What you should be doing is asking the right questions and then going and getting the information. And you're right, one of the powers of artificial intelligence is the ability to process data. Okay, but it has to be data, again, within a context. The human mind, you need as a business leader, even in your podcast, you need to think through what your strategic game plan is and get the data to help you then make some fundamental decisions. Let me give you an example. You're looking at you're looking at demand characteristics for customer sets. Okay, when you're trying to figure out who to serve, there may be some useful information out there that you can get from DeepSeek or Google Gemini that help you. By the way, DeepSeek is my favorite, just to say, and I'll tell you why some other time if you want. It's awesome for a writer, but I've got my own way to use it, which nobody else does. But you ask the right questions, you get the data, and that helps your decision making. But don't just ask for mountains of data. First of all, the human mind is incapable, okay, of implicitly drawing right? What that data implies. Okay, you need to start with a question. Hence, do the work. How big do you want to be? Who do you want to serve? How are we going to compete and win? The cravings piece, okay, of that, you may also get some help. For example, cravings in a business sense might deal with things like inventory turn characteristics or cash flow. Like if the leader is kept awake at night because they can't grow their business, well, then maybe the data will help you become a consultant and a business development person to that client, and just maybe a deeper understanding of what they do that you can get through an AI channel might help. You see what I mean? You just kind of follow it into AI. You don't react to it from AI, is what I would suggest. We're just, as a tactic, look at the marketers of AI have done one hell of a job. Okay.
Yeah.
They've made it into this insatiable thing that if you're not doing it, you must be frickin' stupid, right? That's what they're saying. And the reality is far from the truth. Okay. I've been plunking around with this and learning a lot about it in the last year. And I figured out how to, as a business person and a writer, I've really found out a sweet spot that makes it very valuable and productive for me. But it didn't start out by saying, okay, AI, tell me how to use you to be a more productive writer. Because all I would get back is dribble drabble. All I would get back is a data set based on a million observations, and none of them were me. So the AI machine has to learn Roy in order to be productive for Roy. And so I spent a lot of time talking to it. I send it through my blogs. I tell it to go and summarize all 100 blogs on leadership. Does an amazing job. And I look at it, I change some words, and I tell it what to do. I want more forceful language because Roy talks forcefully. I don't want it written like an English 101 major, for God's sake, right? I don't. And so it does that. And over time, it's getting to know me. And so the rate of my engagement in the production of literary work with, I'll use DeepSeek and give them the name again, that it's going like this because I'm taking the time for it to get to know me. That's one of the learning points for me. And I don't think most people are prepared to put in the time to have an AI partner. They just want to have, you know, garbage in, garbage out. And then at least they can say they're using AI, which is kind of like, you know, it's dishonest, to be honest.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. In the last episode, I also talked to the guest talking about how to use ChatGPT to personalize it, almost like someone who's your assistant, someone who knows you, because it got the memory just so that it can make decisions that fits your personality. But at the end of the day, these are just tools and technology that we use. I think um, no matter how much information that he has, it's just a bunch of information crammed up together, filtered, cleaned out, and just give it back to us. At the end of the day, when we look at that bunch of information, we still need to make decisions, especially when it comes to how do we use the information for us, not letting it using us. So I
That's
think
exactly right. That's exactly right. But you need to be prepared to put in the time and let the algorithm get to know who you are and how you speak. Okay? Because if you don't, all you get back is an average effect of the masses because it just crawls and grabs that data. So what I do is I let every bot crawl my website. And now when I get something done, I will ask for a X 100-word blog post on a title using my work. It knows me. So it knows when I say using Roy Osing's work without his name, it does exactly that now. And so I get exactly that. And when there's a component missing, I say add blah 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 blah, and boom boom, it does it. And it cuts my production time. Now I've got it down to, I mean, I can do a really effective blog post in about 10 minutes.
that's great.
Check out my latest blog series is called Saturday, a standalone Saturday. So if you go to my site every Saturday, I'm posting blog articles on the whole notion of standalone and differentiation. It's kind of my way of addressing the issue that you and I have been discussing, which is the lack of differentiation. And so every Saturday, boom, and you'll see a really cool skull there, which is ChatGPT, and those articles I'm using AI extensively, okay, to help me put those together because I have a time problem, and I'm to be honest with you, I'm using DeepSeek. I've tried the other ones and compared them, and this guy knows me better, and I'm quite impressed with them. I read them and I go, huh, got that one.
That's great.
But you
That's
check them
great.
out. I think you'll enjoy the posts because they're all based on
Standalone.
the standalone notion. And you subscribe to my blog, please, Perry.
Yeah, yes.
Subscribe. I
And
need subscribers.
I'm all about differentiation. I think it's the most important part. Like in almost every campaign that I run on, I just try to think about how do I differentiate from it. One of the questions that a lot of people said to me is that I'm afraid that if I niche down my market and just tailor towards one specific small segment of the market, I'll lose out a lot of revenue by missing out other
Sure.
marketplaces. How
Sure.
do you
So,
respond to that?
oh yeah, easy. I'll go back and say, well, hang on a sec. You haven't done your work. That's not the right question. The question is, given the growth strategy that you have, how many customers and what do they look like and what do they crave are required to generate that revenue? So you don't start out by focusing on the customer segment and then asking the revenue question. You start out with declaring in 24 months, I want $45 million of top line revenue. The next question in the process is, where do I get it? That's the who do you intend to serve? That's where you do the work on defining the customer groups that you believe have the latent potential to deliver that revenue amount. And so you're not leaving money on the table. You're actually creating a mosaic, never said this before, a mosaic of customer segments, okay, which in total will drive to the 45 million. Now you don't have a problem. Then the next question is, what do they crave? Then the next question is, what's your only statement? How are you going to be unique? How are you going to differentiate yourself from the other competitors who are in that same space? And so my point here is, don't short circuit the process. The strategic game planning process has been built around success. It works. I never I mean, if you start short circuiting it, then you're entering the world of yummy. Okay, and yummy just makes you feel good to chase, right? It
We,
doesn't it has no strategic value at all.
I think we nowadays call it shiny object syndrome.
Yeah, you can. It's a shiny object, but the reason I say yummy is it feels and tastes so good. It satisfies the appetite. The shiny object thing, you could be a dog chasing a Tesla for God's sake. That's not what I'm talking about. The yummy thing is, oh, what? There's another tactic. There's another tactic. It feels so good. It feels so good. Or I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. And of course, that's the other side of it. Interesting to me that people define innovation as doing new things. My experience, the biggest opportunity in innovation is deleting the things that are no longer relevant. And the other piece
Mm.
for you guys out there running businesses, constantly look for crap. I call it cutting the crap in your business, the stuff that's no longer relevant, and treat that as an innovative process. Give it some excitement. I mean, it's not viewed as a shiny object. It's not viewed as a sexy thing to do, deleting things, right? And for a lot of reasons, not the least of which could be that you could be taking away somebody's pet project, and that upsets them, blah, blah, blah. Well, hey, get over it. You need to do the relevant things to deliver your how big to the who in a way that only you do. Boom. That's it. That's your job. And so don't complicate it. Just do
So
that.
get lean, get the essentials. It really has to obey the 80/20 principle, the Pareto principle, because I think I read it from a book that there's a law called 20 and 120, which is saying that you make most of your profits from 20% of your customers, but there is also another 20% of customers. Well, actually, it's 20% of the customers generate 120% of your revenue or profits, and there is a segment of 20% of customers deleting the top 20% of the revenue or profits. So you are generating 120, and because of the bottom 20% of the customers, they delete the top 20 and you end up 100%, which is where we get. And when we delete, clean up the crap, like you said, then we get to increase the revenue.
Well, what you end up doing is you end up increasing your bandwidth as an organization to address the people that you want to target. I mean,
Mm.
if you're dragging crap, okay, then that just pulls you away from doing what you should be doing. And so I call it cleansing the internal environment. I call it increasing the viscosity of the value delivery system. You can't do that, okay, when you got crap, because that's friction. Crap is friction. You got to get rid of that, right? Even though it may be really fun and cool to do, to chase, it's going to take you away from achieving your goals. So stay really focused, right? It's a proven process. How big? Who do you want to serve? I know I'm repeating myself, but I find I need to. And how are you going to compete and win? Create your only statement. You need to be the only one who does what you do, not the best, not better, not the leader, the only one. And it's hard to do. But can I give you an example of an
Yeah,
only
sure.
statement? So
Yeah.
this was the landscaping company, okay, who thought they were in the business of cutting lawns, etc., from strata development companies. So their only statement ended up to be, "We are the only service partner who delivers tailored property development solutions for strata complexes." Okay, you won't see nothing about landscaping in there whatsoever. They're saying property development because it's a broader framework. And so what we have to do is define specifically what we mean by property development, which we've done. And so they're now in the property development business with tailored solutions. Nobody else is in that space. And they've been on the strategy for, I would say, 18 months now. And holy smokes, I know the CEO very well. And of course, I keep asking him, how's it going? How's it going? Because I make sure he stays to the strategy, right? Because we have a review session, right? He is absolutely enthralled. He says, "Roy, I finally know what I'm doing now. I have a reason for being." And that's a lot of the problems that people get into with founders and young professionals and CEOs is they're overwhelmed. There's so much that is possible to do. What we have to do is help them cut through that and go to the absolute necessary to do. And the process that you and I have just been discussing, Perry, is just a proven way to get going in that. And I would just really, really say to people, give it a try. Give it a try. There's all sorts of resources available on this through my website, and email with me and phone calls with me. I'm happy to have a conversation with you or anybody else that wants to talk about growing their business in ways that make sense.
That's very insightful. Yeah, there's so much potential there. Most people are just trying to monetize everything that they ended up overwhelming themselves. Whereas your methodology is reverse engineering the goal, identify the time frame, the revenue that you want to hit, the profit that you want to get, and identify the target. Get to know the customers, do the work to research it. Would you recommend using like AI to do the customer research, like just hitting it, hey, give me the profile, or do you?
Yeah, I think you use whatever you can, and I would also encourage a healthy dose of face-to-face focus groups.
Yeah.
Using AI is one thing. Look at AI treats the whole thing as a mass market challenge. Okay, that's what it does because that's what it does well. And so you're going to get some insights from that process. If it were me, maybe I'd do that, and then I would take what I thought I learned from that and go test it in the real world. I'd have sampled focus groups of people who are in those who groups. I call them who groups, and just say, hey, does this, really cool conversation, and just test it. and you probably learn some additional things as well. But spend time on that whole cravings notion. What
Yes.
emotionally triggers these people that I think are potential consumers for what I'm going to be selling? Spend some time on that because people buy on emotion. They expect the internet service to work. Okay, I don't get any plaudits. Okay, never did in the day. Now, I had no customers ever phoning me saying, Roy, I am so excited about the fact that your internet service works. I mean, they just they just sort of expect it, right? But
Yeah.
what they didn't expect is a lot of the other service related things that we built into our value proposition in terms of priority queuing. And by the way, we hired people who loved people. Okay, that's another thing. I laughed when you said one of your questions was what were some of the things that people didn't believe of unpopular opinions, you said. Well, one unpopular opinion that I had that drove people crazy was my response to recruitment was hiring for goosebumps. Hiring for goosebumps. Very strategic. Okay. The premise being, I want to hire people that have a huge emotional quotient, and I can't teach them that. You can't train people to love human beings. You can train them to grin, right? But you can't train them to actually love. So I said, well, how am I going to get an idea if we're interviewing people, particularly in the service area, because we had a huge thing going on in service. So I would get involved in this is the president of the company. I'd get involved in every interview, okay, with somebody who wanted to get in customer service. So it'd be myself and maybe three people in my organization. It must have been exceedingly intimidating for a prospective candidate to come into a boardroom with the president and all that guys. Anyways, but it also should have told them how important the position was to the strategy of the company. But I would ask them two questions. I'd say, first of all, Perry, do you like human beings? Okay, so what happens is you would kind of like, oh, okay, I've never been asked that question before. I think it's a trick question, but I have no idea where this dude is going with it. And so you'd be sitting back and what would you say? You'd go, well, yes, of course I do. I think that's the right answer. So then I'd follow up with the second question. I said, okay, tell me a story. I want you to tell me a story that would show me, that would make me feel that you actually do love human beings. That's the question. Okay, that separated the looky-loos from the people that were actually running around with this I love human being gene in them, right? It wasn't, but and so the people that were just kind of like, treating it as sort of a little game, you could tell, and you just usher them out of the room right away. But the people who really had this natural desire to care for other humans, right, in a very deep way, they would tell me a story. I'm getting them right now. They would tell me a story that was so rich in emotion and that it left me with goosebumps. And I got them right now just telling that story. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And I would hire them on the spot and teach them the job. See, that it's all wrong now. We hire on the basis of education, okay,
Yeah.
and skill sets. What I did is I too wanted the right education. Don't get me wrong, okay, but what I did is I went beyond that to say I want to know what DNA is running through you. Okay, because when I unleash you in front of a customer, they are my most important asset. I want to put the most important employees in front of the most important assets. And those are the people who care. And so we did a lot of work around how do you create a caring culture. People thought I was crazy to try and develop a caring culture. And yet it was very strategic. You can see by virtue of this conversation how strategic that is if in fact you wanted to build a business, right, around customer loyalty. And how do you get referrals? Well, you get referrals by having absolutely blown away customers by the moments of truth you have in your business. And how do you
Customer
do that?
experience.
By the way, can you do that with an FAQ on a website?
Do the FAQ on the website.
Can you actually
There's no experience. It's just text.
Hey, come on. There's another example of, well, let's build an FAQ and that way we'll strip all of the customer service volume away and we'll save money. Yeah, you might save money. I'll tell you why you're going to save money because you're going to lose customers, right? I mean, so there's a role for FAQs and websites and that sort of stuff, yes, but it's not. It's you shouldn't be using it, okay, in an engagement process because an FAQ algorithm doesn't know Roy. When I'm phoning in, it has no idea how to satisfy me, and in fact, it pisses me off, is what it does, right? And so, how you use AI in customer service is a huge issue for me. And I start out with the premise that says you don't. You create and compartmentalize perhaps a small section that you want to try this, but keep it away from the main engagement process because you're going to lose loyalty, you're going to lose referrals.
Yeah, by the way, for business that do B2B outreach and engagements, I'm pretty, I mean, I'm not totally against it, but I wouldn't do it myself, which is blasting out a ton of emails that's not personalized, because I never found that really worked. And also, that is just not very genuine to me. Like, for most of the time, almost all the time, actually, that whenever I'm trying to engage someone with someone, I have to double check everything and just putting my thoughts and my opinions and my ideas into it, because I feel like at the end of the day, we're doing business with human beings. No robots will pull out their credit card and buy your products or services. So what you mentioned about the recruitment process, it's not just strategic. I think I can see that at the core level, it's on the principle of being genuine and caring with the customer. That's real customer centric.
Yes, it is, but it also requires a culture with it that values that behavior. And there's a lot of difficulties that I've run into where the culture um, speaks of exceeding customer expectations, but has no way how to deliver it. And particularly in the call center environment, prioritizes cost management over customer satisfaction. They say that they want to, they want you to have a great call center experience with a call center rep, and yet it's a horrible experience because A, you can't understand them. At least I can't. Sorry. B, I get rushed through it. And so it's in fact I would call it a de-dazzling experience. It actually takes currency away, and I think worse of the company than I did on when I'm going in. So the whole issue of how to create a customer caring service strategy is huge. And it's the same process, okay? But the difference is you got to make sure that the words and the music, okay, actually follow one another. And I'll say it, in most organizations, I will say most, it doesn't. Okay, the words of the leader never gets translated into the actions and behaviors of employees, and call them frontline employees or customer facing employees in the business. And that's because the leader has abrogated the responsibility in terms of not defining the expected behaviors that should deliver a mind-blowing customer moment. And it's because it's that level of detail that creates billions of dollars of revenue. And most leaders don't want to get into that. First of all, they don't think it through because they haven't done the process and they don't have the perspective. And moreover, they think their job is something else. I don't know what it is. They don't see themselves as kind of like the chief operating dude in the business. And yet it's the operations that actually delivers the results, right? So,
Being in business after I graduated, I found that a lot of business owners are really interested in chasing new customers. And after they got that first payment from the customers, they kind of like, okay, next. That's what I've noticed. Yeah, and customer experience and that journey and the post-purchase experiences are what actually keeps the customers in the business. And also, if eventually that's how they start to refer. And for business that grow by word of mouth, I think one of the most important part would be the customer experience.
For
So
sure. And I'll tell you, I'll just give you another little insight here. In that is that revenue growth, okay, is more associated with the existing customer base than it is new customer acquisition. And yet, retaining customers is not a sexy marketing activity. Acquiring new customers is, right? That's the sex, that's the juice, right? And so we end up as marketers doing crazy things like offering free services or products to lure you away from a competitor, right? Or get you to join your company. And so join us and you get 60 free days or a free television, blah, blah, blah. The costs of acquisition go through the ceiling. I know this because we were in the cellular business and they used this tactic for a long time because the emphasis was on acquiring new customers. I will say to you that the biggest source of revenue growth is really taking care of the existing base and growing the existing base. And if you're looking for ways to get people, experienced folks, get them away from new customer acquisition, because the only way you can grow that existing base is to have referrals and have that existing base buy more, right? Request more value from you. And the only reason they're going to do that is they love you. Why do they love you? They love you because you love them first. That's got nothing to do with new customer acquisition. You will get new customers, right? But they will sell you because of what you do. And so that's the other piece of all this is the way to significant growth is absolutely putting new customer acquisition on the back burner. Make your focus retention, loyalty building. And there's all sorts of ways that we use. We had service strategies that actually were focused on making mistakes. I mean, do you know that there's no greater loyalty building event in an organization than screwing a customer over, fixing it fast, and surprising them with something they didn't expect? Did you know that? And so people would tell me, Roy, this is cool. What we're going to do is go out and make a whole bunch of mistakes and we're going to recover well and increase loyalty. And I go, well, we probably don't have to do that. We're probably going to make a few because that's just the way businesses are. But if we know that the potential is to build loyalty through the recovery process necessitated by screwing a customer over, then we should do it. So we had a whole service recovery strategy in our organization with empowerment principles and surprise kinds of tactical things that we employed. And oh man, God, and people would look at us and go, what are you doing? I can't find any textbook in that. And I go, yeah, you can. Okay. And here it is.
be different or be dead.
But that's an example of something that they go, I don't believe that. I don't believe that works. And I go, yeah, I'm sorry it does. I know it's simple, but that's the other thing, guys. Growth is about doing the simple things that resonate with customers. It is. It's because I mean, customers are really quite miraculous in the way they return a favor. And the favor is simply be nice, be fast, be honest, don't break a promise. And in return for that, they hand you the money and typically will tell 10 of their friends what a great organization you are. Do you want a definition of growth? I just gave you one. And it's got nothing to do with new customer acquisition that you spend money and acquisition costs to go after yourself. It's the cheapest form of marketing in the world. And yet, we got all these little marketing analysts sitting in cubicles across the world trying to figure out how to give money away to attract a new customer away from their competitor. Fire them all or convert them into loyalty analysts. And now say, here are the customer groups that we want to serve. I need to understand what the loyalty triggers are. Go find them for me. Go find them for me. and tell me the value that we can provide them to trigger that loyalty and have them refer us. Yeah, and then make sure that the referrals are accurate and the testimonials are honest.
And it's
Which tend,
all starting from knowing your customers really well.
boom, you got it. See, easy peasy. We
I
know what
love
they
it.
crave.
Yes, yes. Do the deep research. I think I mean, I've been playing with AI tools for a year, more than a year about. And I don't think that the insight I get hits me harder than being face to face with someone. Because if there is someone in front of you and they actually tell you the story, what they like, what they don't like, the frustrations, the desires, the problem, their deepest fear, that has a story and you can see the person in front of you having that experience telling you their story, that hits a lot harder than using tools or scraping the internet to generate a 5-page report that just giving sentences of their deepest fear. Yeah, those are some deep dark secrets or some of the most hard-hitting frustrations that they're having, but there's no empathy in me when I just looking at that report. Whereas if I'm talking to someone, I can feel it and I can then custom tailor the strategy based on the person that's in front of me, which is also the target audiences. So I think that's one of the most important thing is to understand to the customers, but it's one of the most boring stuff that most people don't like to do. It's not
Well,
sexy.
but it's exactly, and the reason they don't like to do it is they've been taught that it's not a very sexy thing to do, and they've taught by um, academics. They've been taught by, I will call, product floggers. I mean, the guys that sell AI are nothing more than, you know, sleazy product flogging salespeople. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way. I'm just saying that's what they do and they get paid to do it. Okay. As opposed to coming to Roy and saying, hey, okay, after this conversation, I think I know Roy. He's kind of an edgy old dude. Yeah, and he's pretty smart. He's been around a whole lot. What I need to do is I need to customize an AI application that actually gets him real fast, is okay with saying shit occasionally, right? And speaks with forceful words. You know, I mean, wow. I mean, that understanding coming from somebody trying to get me to buy an AI solution, I would go, wow. I would say wow because I didn't expect it. And that's the other thing we haven't talked about is the element of surprise, okay, in terms of growing a business is huge. But it happens on the coal face where the customer and the company have an engagement. That's where it has to happen. It's not in an email. Okay, you can carry it through an email at some point in the engagement process, but its most power comes when you have an engagement and something happens and the employee says something or does something or offers something that is completely unexpected based on what has happened in that engagement process, and the customer goes, "What? Where did that come from?" They will tell that story a million times. So, what's the surprise strategy of a business? You need to have, in the service sense, you need to have the element of surprise. So, we need a strategy for surprises. I know that sounds crazy, but that's the level you're at because that's how people think. They don't think at the algorithmic level, they don't think at the formalization level.
Mm.
They think at the what's going on in their gut and at the basic emotional level. And those triggers are
The
huge
human level.
opportunities. Yeah. Yeah. And they are the triggers for growth. They are the opportunities for growth, not a new customer acquisition strategy. As
That's
promulgated with a guy with a PhD in marketing. What the hell?
mm,
You know what the you know what the best MBA is in the world? Masters in Business Achievement. That's my definition of an MBA. It's
Mm,
not the MBAs that are talking about these days. It's somebody that's actually mastered the ability to execute and achieve unremarkable or remarkable results. And that's the kind of person that you want to listen to. They're the mentors out there that we need to steer our young people to. And so ask this person how they did it. Don't ask the blue ocean author. Ask this person who made it in red oceans and created a blue ocean out of it. Go ask them. You see
for
why we
sure.
couldn't do this in 15 minutes, Perry? I told you we
Yeah, for sure. This is a exceptional uh, episode, I have to
could.
say, because when I spot some valuable information, I don't want it to stop. So for those people who expect this to be like a 10 to 15, I'm sorry, this is kind of exception, but I'm doing you a favor. Um, but yeah, if I always say to my friends and family that if you want to learn how to ride a bike, don't learn from someone who wrote a PhD textbook on how to ride a bike. Go to the 16-year-old kid who's dancing on the bike while riding at, I don't know, like 60 miles per hour. That is the person that can actually teach you how to ride a bike. So, for people who want to learn more about you after they've seen this, I'm sure if they have wisdom and insight about business and they want to hear from someone who's using forceful words, who's speaking the truth, where should they go to in order to learn more about you and find out more about you?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've got a website, like most. It's bedifferentorbedead.com. And what I've tried to do is put as many resources, Perry, as I could on the site. And I hope hopefully people will enjoy it. I blog a lot, at least twice a week on the site. And so please subscribe. I want you to subscribe. So if you're interested in the content, you get regular content. Um, and as I mentioned earlier, I've now got a new part of the series called Standalone Saturday, which is completely focused on differentiation and a need to be different around the be different or be dead philosophy. I've got a books page, and so all 7 books you can see there. You can see the summaries, and if you wanted more information, you could do that. I've got a different view. I've got a different podcast that's also shown on the main page. It's a different format. It's called Audacious Moves to a Billion. And basically, what that is a reposting of either some or all of the podcasts that I've done. I've done about, I think you're number 125 or something like that. So it's been kind of fun doing that. So you can actually hear and listen to some of the stuff that way. I've also got a quiz. And this is a fun thing. It's called the Be Different Quiz. And so it's a way to gauge where you are in your thinking along the be different or be dead continuum. And so it's categorized into marketing, strategy, careers, etc. And what it is a way to test you on the various principles that I advocate in my work, like Goosebumps, like the strategic game plan. And so you rate yourself, right? And then what it does is give you the results and suggests to you which category, okay, maybe you should start with. If you want to actually start to adopt the general approach, if your scores are lower in marketing, then you may want to look at the marketing stuff and say, well, all right, maybe I should start there to do things differently. It's kind of fun. You can do it yourself, or you can do it as I encourage teams to do it, right, in organizations, and it's kind of fun because they start to argue with one another on the ratings, etc., whatever. But I also have an email. My email address is roy.osing@gmail.com. And I'm really happy to have a one-on-one conversation, Perry, with anybody on any of this stuff. It's kind of fun because I'm trying to give back here. I'm just trying to share what worked for me. And I mean, if you can pick up 1 or 2 things and bang, it's been a good day for me. And so I spend time with individuals on their only statement. They'll send me a draft only statement and they'll say, Roy, I heard you on this podcast. You talked about the only statement, kind of made sense to me. Here's a draft. What do you think? Boom. So we've got an opportunity to have that conversation, and hopefully I walk away helping them somewhat. And so the objective I have is really simple. It's to change the conversation in business and careers today. Because we haven't talked about this, but everything that you and I have just talked about can be applied to building a successful and rewarding career. Exactly the same stuff, right? Because I've used it, and we talk about stuff like strategic meandering, and those very strategic words. And so please take advantage of me. I'm here to help you and share with you as much as I can of things that worked for me.
It's very interactive, very interesting, especially on the quiz as well. Well, everybody, there you have it. A huge thank you to Roy. Such incredible wisdom. Make sure you check him out at his website. I'm going to attach the links, resources in the description here. And Roy, thank you so much. This is an incredible podcast episode. I love it. I picked up a ton of stuff from it, especially about the foundations of the basics, the fundamentals, thinking in terms of strategy, not just on tactics. And well, actually, that's the more important part. And the principles, the thinking, there's a lot of information here. I'm glad that I didn't keep this at just 10 to 15 minutes. So yeah, that huge thank you to Roy. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
All right, until next time, stay profitable and keep growing. Thanks.